Good morning, everyone. Hope all of you are doing good. This is Miss Mira, and today we are going to study about the coordinate plane. First of all, I would just like to start with a short introduction about this lesson and how to relate it with the previous lessons that we took. As we learned before, we learned about how to graph horizontally and vertically. So we can have two types of number lines, either horizontally or vertically. We also learned that in the middle I have 0. On the right, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The positive numbers. On the left, we have the negative numbers. Now, it's extremely important that that the graph is divided into equal parts. So even here, so it would be equal part from one number to the other. Okay, if I have a vertical line, up would be the positive numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and down would be the negative numbers, -2, -3, -4. Now, what if I want to integrate the horizontal and the vertical lines together? If I integrate the horizontal line and the vertical line together, I create something called the coordinate plane. So our lesson today is about the coordinate plane. We're going to understand how to use the coordinate plane, how is it divided, and how to graph on it. Okay? Like for example, if I want to identify a specific location, if I am going from my house to the school, okay, we can go left, right, forward, or backward. In this case, we use the horizontal and the vertical lines together. So how do I create something called the coordinate plane? Okay, what do I mean by the coordinate plane? The coordinate plane is the intersection of the horizontal line, which is called in our case the x-axis, and the intersection of the vertical line, which is called the y-axis. So the coordinate plane is made of the intersection of the vertical and the horizontal lines. Okay, they intersect at a point, point 0, which is the origin. So this point is called the origin, which is the 0 of the x-axis and the 0 of the y-axis. So 0, 0 is called the origin. This is the center of the graph. This is from where we start. Okay, now, as we can see that in our graph, once we intersect the horizontal and the vertical line, it is cut into 4 sections. Each section is called a quadrant. So quadrant 1, quadrant 2, we use Roman numbers to express it. Quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Each quadrant is covering a specific area. Okay? How do I remember the organization or the order of the quadrants? I can easily follow the letter C. So I start with quadrant 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Okay, now, each quadrant, as I mentioned earlier, covers a specific or a range, a specific range, okay? So quadrant 1, for example, sorry, let's just divide the number lines. This is the positive numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And the negative numbers, -1, -2, -3, -4. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. And then -1, -2, -3, -4. Okay, so the vertical line is called the y-axis. The horizontal line is called the x-axis. And this whole picture or the whole range is called the coordinate plane. Okay, so let's repeat. The coordinate plane is the intersection of the horizontal and the vertical line. They intersect at a point. This point is called the origin or the center of the graph. Okay, and this point is at 0. So this point is at 0 of the horizontal line or the x-axis and at 0 of the vertical line or the y-axis. And since we are dividing this, we get 4 different ranges. Each range or each region is called a quadrant. So you have quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Each one is expressed in Roman numbers. Now, the next part of this lesson is to understand what range or what is the region of each quadrant. Quadrant 1, our x-axis is positive. So our x is positive and our y is positive. So quadrant 1, any location that has a positive x and a positive y falls in quadrant 1. Okay, in quadrant 2, our x is negative and our y is positive. So any range in this area is quadrant 2. Now, quadrant 3, our x is negative and our y is negative. So anything in this range is quadrant 3. And quadrant 4, our x is positive, our y is negative. So this is positive and this is negative and this is our range. Okay, so we define the different locations by the ranges and by the quadrants. So if, for example, I'm giving a location, how do I express it on this graph? Okay, first of all, let's just in order to identify a location on the coordinate plane, it is expressed or written as the point. What does this point have? It has x and y. Since we have 2 number lines, so we are using 2 numbers, x and y. It is always in this order. So first we move horizontally, either left or right, and then we jump either up or down. Okay, so if I am giving a point, so this is called a coordinates, or it can be also called as the ordered pair, as it's ordered horizontally then vertically, and it's a pair because we have 2 numbers, x and y. Okay, now if I am given a point, for example, 1, 3. So first of all, I need to understand that my 1 is representing that I am going to move on the x-axis or I'm going to move on the horizontal line 1 box to the right, okay? And then this 3 represents that I'm going to jump up 3 units, okay? So my point is a positive on the X and positive on the Y, which shows that it falls in quadrant 1. Okay, now let's go to our graph. Let me show you how does our graph look like and how do I draw it. So this is our grid, our graph, okay? First of all, we identify that the vertical line is the y-axis, the horizontal line is the x-axis, okay? And then we have to divide each box into equal scale. So for example, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then our negative will be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. And on our horizontal line, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. Of course, you will tell me, Miss, is it only till 6? No, it can be till infinite, according to our range, according to our points. So this can extend till -8. So -7, -8. Okay? Okay. Now, where do I use this graph, or how do I use it? I use this graph mainly in locations in Google Maps to identify the location of a specific place, okay? So for example, one of my points would be 2, -4, okay? As I know earlier, I said that I always start with the x-axis and then I move to the y-axis. Okay, so I move 2 to the right on the number line. So on the x-axis, I move till 2 and then -4, which means that I'm going down till -4. So I go down till -4. So this is where our location is. So this location, we can call it point A. Okay. How about if I have another example? Oh, sorry. This location falls in which quadrant? It falls in quadrant 4. Okay. Now, what if I have another location? So let's say point B. Point B is -3, -2. So our x is -3, our y is -2. -3 on the x-axis, which means that I will go to the left on the x-axis, and then -2 on the y-axis, which means I'll go down till -2, which shows that our point is at -2 and -3. This is our point B. Okay. So in this, I showed you how our graph is divided into equal intervals. I showed you how to plot or draw a point given, okay? And as we know that each part or each box is divided into a specific region. So this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. So the point B falls in quadrant 3, point A falls in quadrant 4. Okay, what if I have point C? Point C is 5, 2. So again, I move on the x-axis till point 5, and then I have to jump up, since it's a positive number, till point 2. So this is our new point C, and it falls in quadrant 1. Okay, what if my location or my point, okay, doesn't follow in any of the quadrants? It doesn't fall in any of the quadrants. So for example, what do I mean by that? Sorry. For example, if I said that I have a point -6, 0, okay? Whenever I have one of them 0, either the x or the y, that means I will only stay on one number line. Why? Because I have only one number. Therefore, I can only move in one direction, either right or left or up and down. Okay? I cannot enter the quadrant. What do I mean by this? For example, let's see, -6, 0. This means that on the horizontal number line on the x-axis, I will move to the left till -6. However, my point, my y, is 0. So I cannot go up, I cannot go down. Therefore, my point will lie on the axis itself. I cannot enter any of the quadrants. So my point is -6, 0 lies on the x-axis itself. Okay, what if I have another point? So let's say 0, 2. Okay, this means that my x is 0, that I'm gonna start from the origin and I cannot go either left or right, okay? However, I can go up or down because I have a number for the y, which is 2. 2 is a positive number, therefore I'll go up till the point 2, which means that these points lie on the y-axis. So, from this part, we conclude that I can have a point either in one of the 4 quadrants, okay? Depending if it's positive or negative, I get to identify, okay? We also conclude that if one of my numbers, either x or y, is 0, this means that I cannot move on both number lines. I can only move on one number line. So I can only move either right or left, or I can move either up or down, which gives us the conclusion that this point will only fall on the axis. It cannot enter the quadrants. Okay, so let's solve, or let's have a quick example on how to solve the following questions. So first of all, the vocabularies that we learned the axis, which is the 2 perpendicular lines. The origin is the 0, 0.000 of the x and 0 of the y. Y-axis is the vertical number line, x-axis is the horizontal number line, and the quadrants. Okay. Now let's have an example. What if I have an example, and in this example, they are asking me to identify the quadrant in which the point -3/4, or in other words, we can say that it's -0.75, and 1.5 is located. So how do I figure which quadrant is it? Of course, I can have a small number line to help me figure out which quadrant is it. My x is negative and my y is positive. Okay, so if I go on the number line, my x is -0.5, which means I'm gonna go to the left somewhere in this point. And my y is positive, which means I'm gonna go up till 1.5. So this is my point. This is my point. So this point falls in quadrant 2. Okay. Now, what if they gave me another example? So I have -2.5 and -2.5, which means that my x and my y, both of them are negative numbers. So -2.5 would be somewhere in between here, and -2.5 of the y would be somewhere in between here. So our point is in quadrant 3. Since we learned that quadrant 3, the x and the y both are negative. Okay, it would be useful if you understand and you learn the different regions for each the quadrant. What are the regions that are covered by each quadrant? Okay, now we have this page again. It's more examples about how to identify the point. So my x and my y, both of them are negative. And if we go back to this page, we know that if both of them are negative, then it falls in quadrant 3. I advise you to stop the video to pause the video and solve the next 3 questions as extra practice. Okay. Now, let's move to the next part. For example, if this question asks me to identify the axis, what do I mean by that? I said before, in order for our point to fall in the axis, one of the lines, either the x-axis or the y-axis, has to be 0. So in this case, our x is 0, which means I cannot move either left or right. Our y is 2/5, or in other words, it's 0.4. Therefore, I can go up on the y-axis, which means that this point is located on the y-axis. Okay, what if the next example, to identify the axis of the point 0.25 and 0 is located? My x is 0.25, my y is 0, which means that on the x-axis, I can move to the right, but I cannot go either up or down. Therefore, this is my x-axis. It is located on the x-axis. Okay, the next 2 questions are more examples for you to solve. So please pause the video and solve the next 2 questions. Okay, so I hope that the 2 points are clear, how to identify the quadrant and how to identify the point. The next part of this lesson is how to find the ordered pair. What do I mean by that? So for example, they give us a location of different points, and we need to write, or we need to identify the ordered pair of that point. Okay, first of all, the first point that they want us to write the ordered pair for is point A. So point A will be x, y. That's how our ordered pair is written. Next, I will check the point. So A is here. As I can see that it is at -1.5 on the x-axis, and it lies at 1 on the y-axis. So the point A is -1.5 on the x and 1 on the y. Okay, point B and point C. Point B, it lies on 0.5 on the x-axis as it's on the positive or to the right of the horizontal line, and on the y-axis it is -2. Okay, so I found the ordered pair of point A and B. I advise you to pause the video and find the ordered pair of points C and D. Okay. Next, the next part of this lesson is to learn how to find the point using the ordered pair. So they gave us an ordered pair and they want us to identify the point for each ordered pair. Okay. For example, we have the point half, comma half. So our x is half, our y is half. Half on the x-axis is here, half on the y-axis is here. Therefore, this is point Z. Okay. What if I have the next point? -1, 1.5. So -1 on the x-axis, which means I will go to this direction. -1 is here. And then 1.5 up. So I move till 1.5, which shows me that my point is point X. Now, please find the point for -2, -1.5, and the point for 2, -1.5. Pause the video and solve the following 2 questions. Okay, now the last part of this lesson is to understand how to graph the ordered pair on our grid. What do I mean by that? So for example, if I have such a question, 4.5, -1, as I can see that each 2 boxes is 1 centimeter. So anything in between would be half. So 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, and so on. Therefore, let's look at our point. Our point is 4.5 and -1. We go on the x-axis till the point 4.5, which is this point. And then on the y-axis, we go down. So as we move down, so this is our y-axis, and this is our x-axis. So our point is located at this quadrant, which is quadrant 4. Since our x is positive, our y is negative, this is quadrant 4. Okay, let's check another example. What if my example is, my point is -2.5 and -3.5. Okay, that means that my x is on the left side and my y is down. So I go on the x-axis on the left. So here is my -2.5. And I go on the y-axis down. So this is my -3.5. And then I draw a straight line till these 2 lines join or intersect. So this is my point N. Okay, and point N falls in quadrant 3 since both of them are negative. Okay, now let's have extra practice questions. So these are 2 different examples for you to practice on how to graph point A and point X. Please pause the video and graph the 2 points. Okay, now let's have an activity that would explain it in real life. So for example, if I have such an activity to write the coordinates for each point. Okay. Now, this butterfly, as I can see that if I draw a straight line on the x-axis, it is 3, and on the y-axis, it is 3. So our ordered pair for this point is 3, 3. Okay. What if I look at the leaf? The x-axis of the leaf is -2, and the y-axis of the leaf is 4. So our ordered pair for this point is -2, 4. Okay, this is quadrant 2, quadrant 1, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Let's look at the flower. Our x of the flower is -4. The y of the flower is -3. So -4 and -3 is our ordered pair. Please pause the video and continue figuring the ordered pair for each picture and check your answers. And as well, you can identify the quadrants. I hope that today's class was clear and direct. I will just recall everything we covered in today's class. So today we learned something called the coordinate plane. The coordinate plane is the intersection of the horizontal and the vertical line. The horizontal line is called the x-axis. The vertical line is called the y-axis. They both intersect at a point or at the origin 0, 0. Okay. We learned how to use the number lines in order to plot the point, in order to identify if it falls in the quadrant or if it falls in the axis. We also used it in order to identify if I have a specific location, how can I identify the ordered pair for that specific location. And if I have an ordered pair or I have a specific ordered pair, how can I find the point that is related to this ordered pair? Okay, I hope by the end of this class that everything is clear and that you have had a good practice. Thank you all. Hope you have a nice day.